let's talk about that idea because while reading ESPN.com today, Jeff Passan wrote about a realistic trade scenario for the contending teams and a dream trade consideration for contending teams. And his for the White Sox was the same player, Reid Detmers with the Los Angeles Angels. And as Passan wrote about as far as the dream aspect of this partnership, more so from the angle of the Los Angeles Angels and Artie Moreno, their owner, finally need to pick a lane. A little bit overdue, and Passan is advocating, and I think many around Major League Baseball are advocating for the Angels to start rebuilding, meaning that you don't just trade Reid Detmers, but you finally trade Mike Trout. And in a possible hypothetical deal with the White Sox, Jeff Passan suggested the idea that maybe Noah Schultz could be involved in such a trade. Jim, would that be too soon? Like, is it too soon to talk about adding Noah Schultz into a potential trade?
Not necessarily, just because of the injury concern and the fact that he's had a hard time staying on the mound. It reminds me a little bit. I think of a couple situations of which ways it could go. Is one is Daniel Hudson would be one, somebody who was thrust into a rotation that had postseason aspirations, and he wasn't quite getting it done. And so they traded him for Edwin Jackson. And then he went on to have a nice year with Diamondbacks, and then arm problems set in. But for a while, it looked like they lost that trade. And then afterwards, when Hudson was more of a reliever, hindsight looked like an okay trade. Neither side kind of got what they wanted ultimately. Like Jackson was a competent professional. Like I'd like to say if James Shields turned out to be Edwin Jackson in that trade, and they gave up Fernando Tatis for Edwin Jackson, and Jackson provided, or Shields provided like the 200 decent innings, and they didn't make the postseason, but it wasn't his fault. Like you could see what the White Sox were going for and said Shields crapped the bed, and that's why it hurts. But Jackson was fine, and like Hudson didn't quite pan out in that starter role, so it hurt initially, but it was worth doing, or at least you understand it. Like, you could run it back and maybe make the same case again. The other one is like Nick Madrigal, who just every injury he had kind of sapped his ceiling just because he just kept getting hurt. And like, just every leg injury saps his speed, which, already hurt him when he lost a grade of speed. And you think like, shoulder injury, everything like that's going to sap every bit of power he needs. So when they traded him for Craig Kimbrell, when he's on the injured list, it struck me as like, okay, like you don't know how he's going to come back from the injury. How, let's see how that happens. And turns out like trading Magical is fine. Like the timing was fine. The problem was either getting Kimbrel or exercising his option. So that's kind of how I look at it in those regards. For initially, I was like, ooh, that feels like robbing Peter to pay Paul. On the other hand, you can try to suss out or try to map out some scenarios, and you can see one where Schultz never quite stays healthy. And then you look at it like, well, Detmers, if Detmers on the block and they could have gotten him, that could have been good. So yeah, it's interesting enough, and to where I think it's fine. Like I saw a lot of objections to it, but it doesn't strike me as senseless or reckless. I can see an argument for it.
James, do you agree? Do you think that could be possible?
So the first two observations I have is that yeah, Hudson became a reliever long term. June 17th, 2011, when Hudson threw a complete game against the Sox and hit an RBI double off of Edwin Jackson because pitchers still hit. That was a rough night on the White Sox blogosphere.
Yep.
There was no like this is going to be an okay trade down the road feelings back then. I remember that. I didn't know what to write. I didn't feel like I could match anyone's anger properly.
I,
Um,
I remember writing about saying like that was basically the worst possible representation of this deal.
um, it's what until like they show progress, you're almost it's not cheating. Like sending three distressed assets to the Angels, like, well, it's not going to look bad because you're just sending them to the place where like these projects would all go to die. Yeah, they're probably not going to figure out how to get Noah Schultz right, or yeah, like William Burgoa, William, this is another 9 months with a shin bruise for somehow once he joins the
It's
Angles
like paying
organization.
Alexander Albertus forward.
It's like, well, we clearly got out at the right time, even if like Reid Detmers has like a 4.50 ERA. It's like, well, these sage geniuses, how do we question them? Like they like I don't know what they do to mess up Billy Carlson, but just like all of a sudden he like can't stick at shortstop now, but hits home runs with a low OBP. That'd be the typical Angels player. Um, it's you kind of think like you're selling low on like three different guys in one trade, and certainly with the way they've talked about Schultz in the past, and bringing him up, it would represent like okay, you've clearly like either soured on him or gotten really worried about the knee, or gotten like worried about how quickly you can turn this around or get this right over the last like 2-3 months in a way that like there seems like there's a real story to tell about that based on like what this was sold as up until this point. Whereas like Bergoya, it certainly started out great, but up until like this season, I was like, this all right, it's a zero power like utility infielder. Like it's a nice, fun player and profile, and it's a useful big leaguer, but it's not like a core piece that you have to hoard and can't put on the market. And then Carlson, like there's a chance that like that becomes like a very easy like annual 2 to 3 win player just on defense alone. At the same time, like at least at this juncture where it seems like it's undecided whether the bat is really going to click at all to become a regular. That's exacerbated the fact that he's been shut down by injuries. So there's no been sign of progress in the last 6 weeks that he hasn't been playing. It feels like you could definitely make your peace for it at this time. I just worry like we're kind of prisoners in the moment of looking at all these guys where I could see them as like, well, if there's not an upturn from here, yeah, this wouldn't be a bad time if you really think Detmers is like a multi-year starter in this rotation for a team that's maybe not like win the World Series right now, but certainly is going to be expecting to compete for the division next year and a year after that with the current group you have. So I definitely could get behind it. I definitely want to hear a lot more about how they came to do it if it went
Yeah.
down, because clearly this would represent a change from how these players were being valued, certainly the centerpiece in April, in a way that, let's set up the interviews now, Chris and then Brian, if that's the way things go. But at this present of the moment time, are like, oh man, they got to win this division, and I'm kind of like don't see what's happening right now, or can't see what like the vision towards dominance with any of these profiles. Yeah, it makes sense, but it feels very you better know type of a decision, or not, because the Angels will make you look fine either way.
Hey, Howard, I got hurt at work in the warehouse. My boss doesn't believe me.
Aiken Law has over 100 attorneys and staff ready to work for you. If you've been hurt on the job, in a car accident, or suffered a medical mistake, call 312-6-million.
True, because the Angels. I guess I'm not against the idea of trading Noah Schultz. It just took me aback because I really hadn't thought about the idea. And I owe Josh Friedman, our friend over at WGN, a clip because when I joined him and Jared Payne on GN Sports in early March to talk about this upcoming season, I pitched the idea that maybe the White Sox heading to the All-Star break could be hovering around 500 and taking Rock Chalowski, and it'll be feeling like a lot happier on the south side than on the north side. And voila, I'm looking good so far. But in that same interview, I thought that we would see tremendous progress from Noah Schultz, Hagen Smith, and Tanner Verdugo was throwing triple digits in spring training. That's where White Sox fans should be excited. Wrong. That's like 3X's right now. Well, maybe 2.5. McDougal's moving over to the bullpen, so there's still some time. But I think it's still early. Like, I don't want to be incredibly harsh in criticism of Noah Schultz. He's learning. Maybe because the White Sox are a contending team and leading the American League Central, Jim, it shortens the leash that the White Sox can afford if they are changing their minds and they want to win the division this year, and how many more starts and how patient they are with Noah Schultz. We're still waiting for Hagen Smith, right, to throw after his shoulder injury. He hasn't pitched yet.
He's supposed to literally throw today.
Okay. And
Today being
McDougal's
Thursday, because whoever's listening to this is living in the future.
Yes. And McDougal is moving to the bullpen, which I'm okay with that move. But the
Basically, he
starting,
has, and he's going to stay there.
yeah, the starting depth for the White Sox has been really impacted this season and even last year as well. So if the Angels, with an interim general manager, are going to have some type of teardown, and let's say Jeff Passan has some real dope here, and this dream scenario is moving two of your more recent first round picks in Noah Schultz and Billy Carlson to the Angels for Reid Detmers. I guess I'm not against that idea, Jim. The more that we talk about and think about it, it's just literally this morning, Jim, was the first time I ever thought of the White Sox possibly trading Noah Schultz, and I didn't know how to feel about it.
That's why Magical came to mind, just because when he got traded was like, I didn't know that was
Surprise
possible.
us.
I didn't
Yeah.
know he had a market, and it happened. And when I thought about it, just yeah, makes sense to deal him before knowing what he looks like when he comes back. So just with Detmers, like I think I'd be a little bit more gung ho about it if he had thrown more than 150 innings in a season. Like I think if you're looking for somebody to reinforce the rotation over the last 2 months, you'd want somebody who's not like going to run into his own innings wall maybe towards the end, and then you could end up being just kind of disappointed or unimpressed with the way everything's kind of unfolded. So yeah, that's why I think I wouldn't be necessarily for it. I could just understand how he came to that conclusion, but it's just a matter of like the ERA has gone up recently, and he's always been somebody who his ERA has always been above his FIP. Like he's kind of like the Javier Vasquez thing of just should be better. When these teams going to figure it out, and never quite does it. And you know, perhaps the White Sox can because of the Angels factor and just how everybody seems more or less adrift or left to their own devices on that roster. But that would be my one concern, I think, for that specific deal this year is, does Detmers have enough in the tank to get through 6 months, especially if you're trading Schultz, who is one of your rotation pieces? That's, yeah, maybe Jonathan Cannon's kind of coming up to provide an extra start or two. Like, you know, he's not going to be somebody who, you know, is going to be a postseason rotation, but in terms of giving somebody a blow, just to be able to take a week off, Cannon might be able to do that. You're looking for, you know, that kind of arm, I think, from Charlotte from here on to the rest of the season. But anybody adding from the outside, I think, is somebody you want confidence in that over the last 2 months they can look like they've looked.
Yeah, and the other thing I just thought of, we were hoping that this season that Noah Schultz and Hagen Smith would answer the question of who would help out a 2027 or lead a 2027 pitching staff for the Chicago White Sox. I think that confidence is pretty low at this moment that you can count on them. I know next year is next year, but again, we were thinking in 2026 was going to be another rebuilding year for the White Sox, and that whole future starting rotation for the ball club is hazy. So if you can get someone like Reid Detmers and you have to trade Noah Schultz, I wonder if that tells us, James, that the White Sox front office is a little bit more confident that Reid Detmers could lead a rotation for the White Sox in 2027 than Noah Schultz.
I mean, you would have, you know, Martin, Burke, and Kay all back for next year to
Sure,
start.
yeah.
And at least like some of these options, whether it's McDougal stretching out, or, you know, Drew Thorpe is, you know, it seems like iffy for the season at this point, but like there's at least like a mass of people that are kind of fifth starter candidates, and then you have just, you know, you literally got Fetty for, you know, Randall Grichuk prices this season. Like there's not like necessarily, oh man, they have to sign 3 starters if if Reid Detmers doesn't work out, sort of like depth fault. Obviously injuries can pop up or anyone can go down spring training, but maybe not mega dire. It'd be nicer to have like Christian Hopper, you know, pushing up as an option for 2027. And obviously that's not, you know, how it's worked
How
out.
is he doing?
Look, let's move on. I should flesh out what you were talking about with Hagen Smith because, you know, Giannis was talking to the media on Thursday, and McDougal's kind of, there were hints about it weeks ago that this was happening. And then his first 3 outings, were all in the bullpen. And like this was Giannis coming out today, and I think McDougal said it openly in Charlotte too. Like, I'm sticking here for the rest of the year, and that's fine. And I think McDougal was a little surprised by it, but still also like when he got added to the 40-man last year, he's like, I go move to the bullpen if it got me to Chicago, and came to fruition. So I feel like that was a little like, this is finalized, we're ready to say this publicly type of situation. Whereas with Hagen, he's just starting throwing again, and McDougal missed 2 months. Hagen's been a month at this point and is just starting to ramp up. But it's a similar situation of like, it's now more than halfway through the season. We're in the July. Do you want to go through the process of ramping this guy all the way up to get him to start again? When one, he ran in the shoulder impingement, and two, like he wasn't necessarily looking like he was ready starting wise and command wise. And so I kind of asked Yadish, like, what's so different in the calculus here that you wouldn't just like make a similar move with Hagen of just have him finish the year in the bullpen? And they're not at the point of like, yeah, Hagen's going to be the bullpen, but Yadish was like, they're not different. They're pretty similar. That's a good comparison. So I think like obviously they want to get to the point where like Hagen's ramped up, he's healthy, he's throwing in games, but it seems like it's trending towards a very similar outcome of thinking him more as a likely multi-inning reliever or just a reliever down the stretch than really seeing him taking one of the rotation spots. So when you're approaching the trade market, I think McDougal, Smith, really relying on those being like somebody who comes in and just starts taking the ball every fifth day. It sounds like that's a little by the board already, and that might be a little bit more impetus of like, hey, if we're going to get someone who really just comes and becomes a part of the rotation and takes the ball every fifth day, and we're counting on that to ride out the season, maybe it's going to have to be external, or you're going to have to like get really convicted about Mason Adams in a period of time where I think it's understandable they still could because he is relatively early in his TJ rehab, and he really didn't pitch much at AAA before that. But I think that with what all we've listed out and all the scenarios we've talked about, that alone could kind of get you to why they might need to be aggressive in terms of getting a starter at the deadline. Because it's a little tortured path to seeing with a solution internally. And we also asked him straight up about like Drew Thorpe. Do you think he'll pitch as the majors this year? He's like not really in position to promise that. So,
well, then it was an idea that I read today. I did not have that notion in my mind, but after we've talked through it, I wouldn't be against it. I would be surprised that the White Sox, I wouldn't necessarily give up on Noah Schultz. He would still be a starter in the major leagues just for the Angels, but there is a need. And in order to fulfill that need with quality, if it takes trading Noah Schultz, I guess I'm not against it after this conversation. Let us know how you guys feel, either in the comment section on soxmachine.com, or for those that are watching the video, let us know in the comments below of the YouTube video.